All right, first and foremost, I'm going to deal with the topic, is the law done away with, or did Christ come to get rid of it? There's a lot of reasons why that's a stupid thing to think. The law is a necessity for many reasons, right? One, it's going to help us become better as a people, blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans, which are the Israelites of the Bible. Two, it's the only way we're going to get the hell out of America and receive the kingdom, right? By changing and coming back to the Most High God. And there's various other reasons why, right? I want to dive into this right off the jump. Matthew 5:17. Think not that I am come to destroy the law, right? This is Christ speaking. If you look in a King James, one of those the red letter ones, you'll see that this is red letter. It says, the prophets, and I have not come to destroy, but to fulfill. So Yahushua, or who people call Jesus, he said he didn't come to destroy the law or the prophets, right? The prophets is dealing with the books like Samuel, Jeremiah, Ezekiel, all that, right? Isaiah. And the law is the first 5 books of the Bible, the Torah, as we call it. He said he didn't come to destroy any of that, which essentially, in new speech, we would call that the Old Testament. He said, but to fulfill. Now, what does he mean by to fulfill? What is he fulfilling? Right? Because the next couple statements after this will make this a contradiction. If this verse is saying that Christ is saying the law is gone and is done, the verses after this contradict what he's saying. We understand that the Bible does not contradict itself, and the Most High God is not the author of confusion, right? We understand that. So it can't be that, but we're going to deal with the word fulfill in the Greek. It means to complete, fully carry, fully come, increasing, made complete, past, right? Accomplish, supplied, and then let's go down, let's see. Fully preached, perfect, supply, satisfy. All right. So what he means by that, which this is a whole nother lesson on its own, there's prophecies about Christ in the law and in the prophets. Like if you go to Isaiah, you have prophecies about him. You have prophecies throughout the Torah about Christ, which he fulfilled. He came to fulfill the prophecies about him in the law. Salaki, there's an ambulance passing by real quick. All right. So he came to fulfill the law and the prophets. And what it was talking about, which is just a whole other lesson on itself, this is a lesson. This is going to be a lesson I'm going to have to make later, proving Christ the Messiah and all that. But he fulfilled the prophecies again. For you hard-headed brothers and sisters that didn't hear it the first 2 times, he fulfilled the prophecies about him in the law and the prophets, which is the Old Testament, right? And then congruently, when you read verse 18 and go down, this makes it harmoniously make sense, right? It harmoniously flows, makes sense. Christians say this says, oh, it's gone, it's done away with. They don't read the verses after that. So now Christ saying it's gone, but now he's saying it's not going to pass. Like, it's a contradiction, right? It doesn't make sense. It's not the Bible, it's their theology, right? But verse 18, for verily I say unto you, till heaven and earth pass, one jot or one tittle, because we wrote, in Hebrew, this jots, tittles, the way it was written, shall in no wise pass from the law till all be fulfilled, right? So what is all this going to be fulfilled? All the prophecy has not been fulfilled. Even in the Old Testament, this prophecy is about Israel. We're still in captivity, right? This prophecy in the Old Testament, the New Testament is definitely not fulfilled in Revelation, etc. Right? It says, whosoever therefore shall break one of these least commandments, the least commandments, right? Keeping a bear where it infringes the small things, and shall teach men so, right? Like the pastors, it shall be called the least in the kingdom of heaven, right? And you don't want to be called the least in the kingdom of heaven. But whosoever shall do and teach the same shall be called great in the kingdom of heaven. You want to be great. I want to be great in the kingdom, right? Under Yahushua. For I say unto you that except your righteousness shall exceed the righteousness of the scribes and Pharisees, you shall no case into the kingdom of heaven, right? So what is he talking about? When you deal with that, what Christ is talking about, the Pharisees were hypocrites, right? Some of them, not all of them. Some of the Pharisees, like Nicodemus and such, some were righteous, but some were hypocrites. Some scribes, pay attention to the word some, right? Some scribes were not, right, righteous, and some were righteous. So the ones that were unrighteous were hypocrites. They were lying, they were saying do this, do that, but they weren't doing it, right? Telling brothers not to, have sex with somebody else's wife, but they having sex with somebody else's wife, right? The modern day Pharisees that are unrighteous would be like the pastors and all that. But we're going to keep going. I want to pay attention morally to verse 17 of Matthew chapter 5, right? And other translations. So we understand that Christ said he have come not to destroy in the KJV. But when you read it from like other translations, like the Byron Study Bible and all that, it says I have come not to abolish. Abolish means to not get rid of, right? Like he's saying he didn't come to get rid of it, right? Other translations say destroy, abolish, right? Basically the same thing. To get rid of, destroy, remove, undo. So when you look at comparative text in English translations, he's saying the same thing. And even the Greek and the Hebrew makes it make even more sense. And then I want to also jump into something with Paul, because brothers would say, oh, Paul follows Yahushua HaMashiach, or Jesus Christ. He follows the Messiah, so we're supposed to follow Christ as he follows we're supposed to follow Paul as he follows Christ. So Paul said the law is done away with, right? A lot of brothers and sisters would say that Paul says that, but he doesn't say that. He doesn't say that at all. He doesn't teach that or say that. When you look at what he actually teaches and what he actually said, he said this. Let me find it. All right. So he says in Acts 24 and 14, it says, but this I confess unto thee, that after the way which they call heresy, right? When you deal with the Christian church and a lot of people that read the Bible, when you follow the law, you follow the law, statutes, and commandments, like keeping your beard, not eating pork, not doing this, keeping the high holidays, not doing certain things. A lot of Christians and a lot of our family, right, and a lot of people that follow these different beliefs, they won't like you. And they'll say, that's false, that's a false doctrine, that's a false Jesus, all this other stuff, right? So Paul is saying the same thing, right? But it says, when you read it and you go down, it says, so I worship the God of my fathers, right? Who is he talking about? He's talking about, like, because the context is dealing with Israel, the Israelites. So it says, believing all things which are written in the law and the prophets, right? And the law is dealing with the Torah, and the prophets is dealing with the same thing Christ said. So he's believing all things in the Torah and the prophets, which is the Old Testament. And we understand that Paul teaches to be a doer, like there's a verse on it. Like what you read, you gotta be a doer of it, right? Not deceiving. So we understand Paul teaches that. So if he believes this and he understands this, we understand that he also is doing the same thing, right? He's doing the same thing Yahushua HaMashiach taught, which a lot of you Negroes out there, blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans, y'all listen to your pastor and he's not telling you the right thing. Paul and Christ are basically saying something contrary to what he's saying, right? So it says, all right, so let me see, leaving off things. All right, and also you'll understand that I want to pay attention to the word heresy, right? Some people even call this a cult, like being an Israelite, Hebrew Israelite, which in the New Living Translation it says, but I admit that I follow the way which they call a cult, right? And cult is it just means, first of all, it just means a sect, right? And I want to pay attention to verse 13 because I skipped past that. It says, neither can they prove the things thereof they now accuse me, right? So a lot of these individuals that say Hebrew Israelites are wicked, y'all do this, y'all do that, y'all terrorists, a lot of shit they can't prove, but right? And they call us a cult, this and that. But we follow the law, statutes, commandments of the God of Israel and righteousness. So, I mean, it's just, to be honest, a lot of stuff that they say It's like it's just regurgitated stuff. But we know what we do, right? I want to skip to the next point. All right, so this is a good one because I see a lot of Christians, they go here and say that the law, statutes, commandments is done away with because of this. All right. So somebody's talking to Yahweh, asking them a question. They said, Master, which is the great commandment in the law, right? So what is the greatest or highest chief thing in the law we must do? It says, Yahweh or Jesus said unto him, thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart and with all thy soul and with all thy mind. So that's the first one, right? When you deal with the first one, basically you have to love the Most High God, like not having no other gods before him, not worshiping idols or not making idols of him. That's loving the Most High God. And you know what, doing these law, statutes, commandments, like he told you, day in and day out. And then it says, this is the first and great commandment. So that's the first and the greatest one, right? Then it says, and the second is like unto it, thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself, right? So when you do the rest of the laws, me not having an evil eye or hating my brother or sister, stuff like that, and judging righteous judgment and not being a hypocrite, that's me loving my brother, right? And it says, as you love yourself, I'm going to tell brothers and sisters not to eat pork and stuff, because pork and all these abominations that the Bible says we are not to eat, and wearing mixed fabrics and all that, that's loving myself, right? So I got to tell my brothers and sisters not to do that. And in Christ, he goes down to say this, and the second is like unto it, Slakia, verse 40. And these two commandments hang all the law and the prophets. So this is what the whole law is summed up into: loving myself, loving my brother and sister, and loving the Most High God. Every single law goes back to that. So no, simple people, like a lot of you simple brothers and sisters listening to your pastor, this is not the only two laws. That's stupid. That doesn't make sense. Like, because now you gotta ask yourself, right? If there's no standard of what love is according to the Bible, right? What is love? Now it becomes a subjective thing, right? So now I have to ask you, what is love? If you're giving somebody a hug or a kiss, that doesn't make sense. The Bible tells you that love is following the commandments of the Most High God, right? And what is that? The laws, statutes, and commandments. The commandments is another way of saying law, right? The Torah. All right. Now we're gonna jump into James. This is the most known one. A little background check. When you do the Protestants, the damn Edomites, which is the so-called white man, they wanted to remove the book of James because it goes against their doctrine of not, by faith alone you're saved, right? But James says this in James chapter 2, verse 17. Even so, if it have not works, is dead being alone. So, even so, faith, if it have not works, is dead being alone, and vice versa, right? So if you don't have, in order to have, like, here's the thing, right? In order to do these works, you have to have faith. You're not going to do these works if you don't have faith, you don't believe it, right? Because I've seen people fall out the truth of believing the Most High God Yahweh through Yahweh Shai HaMashiach, right? They fell out because they were doing the works, yeah. Brothers and sisters stopped smoking for like 2 months. They did the works. Oh yeah, this is nice. But they didn't have faith. They didn't truly believe, right? So they fell out. Boom, fell. And then the Christians, a lot of our brothers in the Christian church, some of them actually do have extreme faith. But the thing is, they don't have the works to back it up. They're still eating pork sandwiches. They still sleep with somebody's wife. And they truly believe that they will be saved and not destroyed for what they're doing. But see, here's the thing with us. as an Israelite, we have both. You're not supposed to be a hypocrite. We're supposed to have both, the faith and the works. That's how the Most High God is going to try the weak, right? We can't be lukewarm. And Christ taught, this is another lesson I want to get into later. Christ actually taught a faith-based works. I want to dive later into that in another video. But I want to pull one of the verses, Matthew 23 and 23. It says, "Woe unto you scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for ye pay tithe of men and come in and have omitted the weightier matters of the law." So like the Christian church, they take tithes, but they don't do the rest of the laws. All done away with. But they take the tithes and they say you got to give your tithes to the Lord, right? All that stuff. Who shall rob God? All that stuff, right? So Christ is speaking to, these, basically, if he was on the scene, he'd be speaking to the modern day pastors like that. Creflo Dollar, right? Creflo Steal Your Dollar, T.D. Jakes, T.D. Snakes, all that. Joel Osteen. So, they were doing the same thing. These pastors are doing the same thing that these wicked Pharisees and scribes are doing, right? Keeping tithe but not following the law. And he said, so this is what he says, Christ. He says, and have omitted the weightier matters of the law, right? So you have omitted, right, which is like to suppress or not do or get rid of the weightier matters of law, judgment, mercy, and faith. So faith isn't a work. Oh, Christ said to have faith and duty. So that's a work. Judgment is a work. Giving people judgment and rebuking. And having mercy even is a work. Christ said, have mercy on your enemies, which are our own brethren, right, of Israel. So that's a work, right? It says, but they say is by faith alone, but faith is considered a work. So that statement is redundant. It says, these ye ought to have done and not leave the other undone, right? So you got to do all that. So I don't know what the hell they talking about, right? And Christ cuts the modern day pastors and these scribes and Pharisees back in the ancient time that are following the law 100%. They aren't following it. He gives us this advice. In the KJV, it says, therefore, whatsoever they bid you observe and do, but do not ye after their works, for they say and do not, right? So to give clarification, basically, the context of what's going on when you read the whole chapter, Christ is saying to do what the Pharisees say and the scribes, but don't do what they do. Because how we was talking about earlier, they weren't really keeping the law, and they were omitting the weightier matters of the law. So it says in the New International Version, right? It says, so you must be careful to do everything they tell you. Right? Why is he saying to be careful? Because you'll look at these fools and be like, oh, they're not doing it. Why the hell would I do it? Right? He says, be careful and do it, but do not do what they do, for they do not practice what they preach. And they're preaching the law, statutes, commandments, but they're not doing it. Right? So you got to be very careful. So when you summarize this whole thing and look at it, Paul is saying to keep the law. He follows the law and to keep it. And other people are calling what he's doing, keeping the law and, following the prophets, they calling it heresy. They're calling it a cult. And Paul is saying he follows this, right? And as he follows Christ, that's what Christ says he follows these things too, and it's not done away with until having an earth pass, one jot or one tittle, right? So Christ and Paul are harmonious, but you got to ask yourself, are you believing or teaching the same thing as they are? If you're not, you're going against the grain. You're going against Yahushua. And there's going to be a judgment for that. For a lot of you people out there teaching that. Right? And this is my last verse to end it out. Revelation 20 and 12. It says, and I saw the dead, the small and great, stand before God. And the books were open. And another book was open, which is the book of life. And the dead were judged out of these things which are written in the books according to their works. So you're going to be judged according to your works. Right? As it says in Ecclesiastes, judgment is under the sun, and the righteous and wicked are judged, right? dealing with the regeneration, which I did a video on regeneration. You can check that out. But this is dealing with end time judgment, the lake of fire. A book is going to be open, right? And for the Israelites, even the wicked Israelites that get regenerated back into the kingdom, it's going to be dealing with the works. And then other translations say, the New Living Translation says, I saw the dead, both great and small, standing before God's throne, and the books were opened, including the book of life, and the dead were judged according to what they have done, as recorded in the books, right? So, I mean, we're going to be judged according to works in the end time, in Revelation. So it's like, I don't understand, I don't know what a Christian or anybody that doesn't believe or believe what they can say against the precepts and verses that have been brought out. Because you gotta try actually really hard to go against the grain of what was brought out. Because if you're going against what was just brought out, first of all, you don't truly follow Paul, which a lot of you Christians out there, Paul is your Messiah, which he follows Christ, and he's saying the same thing Christ is saying. And if you're going against what Christ is saying, you don't believe in Yahushua, so you're finished, right? And let alone the Most High God. If you don't believe what they're teaching you, you ultimately really don't believe in the Most High God either. So with that, I end this and say Shalom.